no one saw it coming. While African youth were marching through the streets of Ouagadougou, Accra, and Johannesburg with signs declaring, "Hands off Traoré," and while social media burned with fury over growing fears of Western intervention, something bizarre happened. In a quiet, calculated voice, the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, went live. And then she did the unthinkable. She openly criticized France, denounced the CFA franc as modern colonization, and expressed support for none other than Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, the man the West wants gone, the man the youth want protected, and the man the African diaspora is now calling our only hope. Why would a European leader back the very African revolution her continent once tried to suppress? What does she know that we don't? And is this the beginning of a global realignment, or the setup for something far more dangerous? In this video, let's uncover what really happened. It didn't start with a press release. It didn't need a press conference. The revolution didn't begin on a stage. It began in the soul. In early 2025, something ancient woke up in Africa. Not the Africa of newspapers or tourist brochures, but the living, breathing Africa. The one whose pain had been ignored for centuries and whose victories were always declared by outsiders. This time, Africa didn't wait for approval. It didn't knock on global doors. It kicked them open. Burkina Faso lit the match. But it was the people, the youth, who set the fire. They weren't just marching. They were recalling ancestors. In Accra, school children chanted, "Free Africa," with fists in the air. In Lagos, motorcyclists rode in convoys, waving flags with Traoré's face. In Bamako, poets stood on corners reciting verses about Thomas Sankara being reborn in the Sahel. Even as far as Harlem and Brixton, Black communities held vigils for a man Western headlines had labeled dangerous. Dangerous, yes, but only to their control. The slogan echoed across continents. Touch Traoré, and you touch all of us. But it wasn't just a catchy phrase. It was a warning. A line in the sand drawn not by politicians, but by people who had seen too many of their leaders fall, from Gaddafi, Lumumba, Nkrumah, to Sankara. Each one taken out not just by enemies with guns, but by friends with contracts. Traoré's rise was different. He wasn't asking for loans. He was rejecting them. He wasn't negotiating with the West. He was replacing it. He had kicked out French troops without flinching. He had expelled USAID, banned foreign mining giants, and made it clear. Burkina Faso would no longer be a farm for Western corporations or a playground for diplomats. The West called him a threat. Africans called him a mirror. And across the diaspora, from Jamaica to Trinidad, from Toronto to Johannesburg, that mirror reflected decades of economic exploitation, military coups, and stolen futures. Africans saw Traoré as more than a man. He was a symbol, a boundary, a dare. But the most surprising part wasn't the chants or the global marches. It was what happened next, when a voice from inside Europe broke the silence and crossed the line. Interestingly, for decades, Europe operated like a unified body, especially on Africa. The policy was subtle dominance, investments that looked like partnerships, diplomacy that sounded like friendship, and aid that came with golden chains. From London to Brussels, the song remained the same, where France led and the others followed, until Giorgia Meloni opened her mouth. At a routine press event in Rome, where reporters expected her usual rhetoric about immigration and national sovereignty, Meloni did something no European leader had dared to do. She broke the code. She called France out, not vaguely, not diplomatically, but bluntly. What France is doing in Africa is not economics. It is colonialism, plain and simple, she said, eyes fixed on the cameras. And we salute leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who have the courage to say no. The moment was electric. French officials were blindsided. Macron's team scrambled to soften the damage, issuing statements about disagreements within allies. But it was too late. The internet had already done its job. Video clips of Meloni's words went viral in minutes. In Ouagadougou, Young men painted her quote on walls. In Senegal, students wore t-shirts with her face next to Traoré's. In Tunisia, digital billboards beamed, "Even Europe is waking up." Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. So why did Maloney say it? That's the riddle. Was she simply using Burkina Faso to humiliate France, her longtime rival within EU politics, and reposition Italy as Africa's new partner? Or was it something deeper? Perhaps, as some Italian commentators suggested, it was a populist leader recognizing that the neo-colonial order is beginning to rot, and she didn't want to be caught on the wrong side of history. Either way, it worked. For the first time in modern memory, a European leader publicly supported an African revolutionary not out of guilt, not as a charity project, but as a geopolitical shift. It wasn't patronizing, it wasn't performative, it was raw, direct, and destabilizing to the West's fragile unity. But in Africa, it was something else entirely. It was a signal, a sign that even inside the empire, the pillars were cracking, that some Europeans, for whatever reason, were no longer comfortable in supporting Paris. And just as the old powers began to fracture, Julius Malema arrived with a hammer. Italy's rebellion shocked the system, but it was Julius Malema who turned that shock into fire. What Giorgia Meloni cracked open, Malema smashed through. From the moment she uttered support for Traoré, the global stage wasn't the same, and Malema knew it. He didn't wait for another Western apology. He didn't call for dialogue. He lit the match, stood on the podium, and delivered what can only be described as a thunderclap across empires. If you touch Traoré, you have touched Africa. And if you kill him, the wound will never heal. This wasn't a metaphor. It was a prophecy, and prophecy doesn't ask permission. Behind him, the scene was anything but political theater. There were no corporate sponsors, no diplomatic handshakes. Instead, there were black fists, blood-red flags, images of Gaddafi, Sankara, Lumumba, and now Traoré, all staring back at the world. The past was not a museum. It was alive, furious, and marching again. But Malema wasn't only looking backward. He was calling out today's imperial powers by name: the CIA, AFRICOM, Trump, Biden, Macron. No one was spared. "Get out," he said, directing his words toward those who still believe Africa is a chessboard and its leaders mere pawns. And in the crowd, the message was already received. You could see it in the eyes of the youth holding placards in Swana, Wolof, Hausa, and Jamaican patois. "We're not afraid anymore." What made Malema's speech even more chilling was what he didn't say. He didn't plead. He didn't appeal to morality. He issued a continental ultimatum: protect Traoré or lose Africa. And as his voice echoed across the Sahel and into European airwaves, it became clear that this was not just a speech. It was a line drawn in blood and in memory, because Malema had seen what happened when African leaders rose too fast. He knew the playbook, and he was now daring the West to try it again. The question wasn't whether the West was planning something. The real question was, would they dare do it now, with the world finally watching? That uncertainty, that pressure, set the stage for something even darker. The silence from Western capitals wasn't peace. It was plotting. While Malema was firing words like bullets, something colder was moving behind closed doors, quietly, surgically. Africa had seen this movie before. It doesn't begin with an invasion. It begins with a leak, a concern, a whisper. The chatter online was relentless. Was the CIA preparing a destabilization op? Were French-backed mercenaries probing Burkina Faso's borders? Were drones already circling? No one could confirm it, but everyone could feel it. Because history doesn't lie. Lumumba, Sankara, Gaddafi, Nkrumah, Cabral. Every one of them was labeled a threat before their deaths, Every one of them was accused of destabilizing the region, when in fact, they were trying to stabilize it on their own terms. So when African youth flooded the streets of Ouagadougou, Accra, Johannesburg, Bamako, and even outside U.S. embassies in Kingston, Jamaica, they weren't paranoid. They were armed with memory. They didn't chant because of a rumor. They chanted because the pattern never changed. "If you touch Ibrahim, you touch Jamaicans," one speaker yelled, eyes blazing. "And we don't play." Her voice shook the street like thunder, not just as a warning to America, but as a promise from the Caribbean to the continent. This time, if a bullet flies, it won't silence the movement. It will ignite it. Because this time, Africans are not asking for answers. They are demanding accountability. The mood is no longer fearful. It's suspicious, ready, watching. And it was in this climate of electrified awareness, where people were studying every shadow, every drone, every advisor sent to African soil, that Italy's move took on new meaning. What once could have been seen as just political theater was now a crack in the armor. If Meloni could say it out loud, what else were Western leaders thinking but not saying? Who else was watching Traoré not as a threat, but as a new partner? It wasn't a conspiracy theory anymore. It was a chessboard. And the next move? It could be a handshake or a drone strike. And Traoré, alone, surrounded, but not surrendering, would have to be careful of both. The question is, can Traoré trust this sudden embrace from Europe? Giorgia Meloni's words were not spoken in isolation. Since then, murmurs have emerged of other European leaders rethinking their posture toward Africa. Some call it diplomacy, others call it desperation. Because while France continues to bleed influence across West Africa, Italy, a former imperial player itself, now sees an opening. The empire's new weapon isn't an invasion, it's rebranding. Where Macron offers lectures and troops, Meloni offers praise and trade deals. The question is, what does she really want? Some advisors in Ouagadougou see Meloni as the beginning of a third path, a way to leverage European fractures for African gains, to play them against one another and loosen the neo-colonial grip without falling into BRICS dependency. Others aren't so optimistic. They remember Libya. They remember Italy's role in EU migration deals that turned African countries into border guards for Europe's refugee fears. They remember colonial crimes disguised as aid, and now they wonder, is Italy simply the West in a different jacket? Because one thing is clear, Captain Ibrahim Traoré has become too symbolic to be left untouched. The West cannot remove him without backlash, but it also cannot allow his vision to spread unchallenged. That means offers will come. Some will be sweet, some will be silent, and some may come from those who once flew fighter jets over Africa's deserts. So the burden now on Traoré is immense. How do you accept new friends without letting them in the gate? How do you fight an empire when the empire starts acting like your ally? The game isn't just dangerous, it's existential. Because every time an African nation chooses true sovereignty, someone, somewhere, loses profit. And no one surrenders profit quietly. What do you think? Is Italy's support for Traoré a genuine act of solidarity or a calculated attempt to reshape Europe's grip on Africa? Do you believe African nations can finally find true allies in Europe, or is this just a new face of an old empire? In the comment section below, share your thoughts on whether Traoré can carefully use Italy's hostility against France in his favor. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.